Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, 5-time Voice Arts Awards nominee, David Brower.
Thanks, Alan. This is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. Our special guest today from DeBary, Florida, is Victoria Grazi. Fascinating young lady I love the way your ideas are and how they're presented. Welcome to the show, first and foremost. How's things in Florida today?
Thank you. It's an honor to be on here. Thank you for having me on. And everything is actually great in Florida. The weather is beautiful. I would say it's probably 84 degrees. So it's definitely a blessing.
Oh, hush.
I love the weather.
I know, right? I'm in Colorado,
parts.
And it's, it might be 75 one day and a blizzard the next. So
Really?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Wow, I've never been to Colorado, actually. I haven't been to many places.
Well, you got lots of time. So what are you doing to... I mean, you share some amazing ideas in checking out your YouTube videos. The truth about your opinion, no explanation needed when you practice solitude, working on achieving goals. Just fascinating conversations, and you have a unique way of presenting those ideas. Where did all this start? Where did this place go where you go, man, I need to share my thoughts with people?
Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate your kind words, because sometimes it's hard for me to even realize what I am capable of doing to help others.
Yeah.
So it's always a refresher to hear that. But basically, I think what inspired me was the struggles that I went through growing up as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And basically why me and my family have moved to Florida about 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in August, from Long Island, New York. We had to move out of there because my sibling had a drug addiction, and it got so bad and we didn't know it got so bad to the point where I found him and he almost overdosed.
My God.
So if I didn't find him one day after my last day of high school, he would have been dead. So that's when we said, you know what, we got to move out of the state and get out of here. And I was really like the catalyst for my sibling.
Mm-hmm.
And, I felt their pain, because it was like traumatizing for me to come in and see that.
I would think so. Yeah, my goodness.
Yeah, because you don't ever expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. And how's he doing?
He's doing better, slow and steady. He actually is... he's a Twitch streamer. I don't know if you know what that is.
I don't.
So it's basically like a gaming, like networking live stream thing, like a broadcast.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Sure.
So he plays like video games on there, and he's actually like a professional gamer. So he does that for like a career right now.
Well, you know what's fascinating to me about that, and this is totally a different subject, obviously, but I've seen some videos, I've seen some news stories, I've seen some fascinating things about gamers and what they do and how they do it and how committed they really are. And some of those folks, I mean, they make some coin. They get sponsors, and it's turning into quite a career for some of those people. So it's fascinating that he found that niche.
Yeah, you know what? He always was a video gamer. He was always a little loud and not violent, but he expresses himself through his video games. I guess talking to people that he connects with on there and whatnot. But you know what? I'm not saying it's a great thing that he's addicted to video games, but it's better than where he came from.
Well, absolutely. And that brings up a point. I mean, one of your videos was about addiction and about suicide, and I found that most interesting because that's always been a high topic in my brain is, how can we help people through some of these issues? How can we direct them to maybe resources that can help them? And the other one that really hits home with me is there's 25 veterans that die every day because of suicide, and I'm a vet. And so, both those topics need to be top of mind with a lot of people, and I'm not sure they are yet. And you're obviously bringing them top of mind, but is that what got you interested in those particular topics, was your brother's experience?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely was one of the biggest motivators for me. It really inspired me to reach other people with that message, because I realized if it's coming from my own family member, I can only imagine how many other people suffer. And feel so alone that they don't even speak up about it.
Yeah.
And, they just go about their day pretending that everything's okay, hiding it. And I know how that feels because I grew up and was diagnosed with depression and anxiety and OCD. It kind of ran in my family. So it's been a struggle, it's something hard to get through. And a lot of people, I feel like their addictions of whatever kind, whether that be gambling, drinking, smoking, any drugs, anything, I feel like most of the times it's rooted in low self-esteem.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I think there's, and I don't know this for sure, this is pure speculation on my part, but I think all
No,
of
me
us,
too.
yeah, I think all of us at some level have some kind of an addictive gene or addictive behavior. I mean, maybe it's food, maybe it's gambling, maybe it's walking the dog 17 times a day, maybe it's OCD. I mean, I don't have anything to prove that. It just feels like we all have at some level
Right.
some kind of an addictive thing, and it's being able to identify that in some meaningful way, share it with others to try to help you identify it and maybe find some help with it. That's a lot of work for people.
It is a lot of work, and that's why I feel so drawn to it, because since I've been through that, I don't wish that upon anyone. Really, I wouldn't, especially depression, because when you're in a state of really deep depression, the difference between that and being sad. And, it's not just like, oh, you're going through a short period of time, although sometimes people do get the two confused and
Right.
automatically think that they have depression these days. But, when you're actually depressed, you're in the mindset where you don't even want to get out of bed at all. You don't acknowledge anyone. You just don't even, you're just out. You're just in bed basically, and you're not thinking about anything. It's really sad.
I was diagnosed with depression many years ago, so I understand what you're talking about. And the meds that I've been on for many, many years have, helped me tremendously. But you're right. I mean, there's so many different kinds of depression. Sometimes we throw it up as anxiety. Sometimes we, just ignore it. I'm stressed to the max. You got to find a way to identify what's going on with you as an individual so that you can, figure out a way to manage it.
Right. And I think that also is really important that you stated that, because, that also goes into, well, I believe that a lot of the times it starts off as, maybe like something going on in your life that's making you stressed, and you don't know how to manage the situation. So I'm not saying it's this for everyone, but for some people, this is what causes it. And then, because of that, they get anxiety, and it begins to spiral out of control. And then that further turns into the depression, because you're anxious and you're fearful of everything. So you get depressed, and it's like a domino effect.
Absolutely.
And I feel like self-awareness, if you can look within yourself and sit in solitude and really get to know about yourself and start questioning things that you never may have before, you can find a lot of answers.
I think that's right. And I think the other piece of that, I think the being able to work through some things yourself, but I think it's also equally important to have someone you trust to be able to be a mirror for what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And so you have something. I mean, I'm very blessed to have a wife that I can do that with. But I think that's, and maybe I'm not being very objective about it, but I think that's an important piece.
No, I actually definitely agree, because, a lot of people don't have someone to turn to.
Yeah.
And that's what my ultimate goal is to be that person for others when they don't have anyone, because a lot of people are isolated, and when they're in a tough place, they isolate themselves not knowing. But because they're in that mindset, they don't know what else to do, and they feel like, no one else knows what they're going through.
Right.
And they feel like they're the only one that goes through it. So if I can help another person and have them relate to what I'm speaking about and build their trust, that would mean the world to me.
That would be huge. Absolutely huge. There's a theme that strikes me, and I haven't watched all your videos, but it seems there's a bit of a theme through some of your videos about isolation, about people being alone, feeling alone, actually alone, and different scenarios around that. Is that a true observation? Is that a good recent observation, do you think?
About people necessarily like being alone by themselves.
That's kind of a theme that I feel through some of your videos, that no matter what your topic is, it feels like there's a piece of it about people being alone or isolated as a part of the problem, whether it's addiction, whether it's suicide, whether it's family issues, whether it's trying to come up with ideas and being an inventor.
That's a great observation,
right?
That you made. Nobody's ever actually, acknowledged that throughout my videos. So that was very intelligent of you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, actually, you just made me realize that because I didn't even think about it that way. But I think maybe that does. I do speak about that because I know what that's like. Because since I moved to Florida, I got into a really bad rut for a little bit because I was unemployed. And, I isolated myself, especially in the town that I live in. It's very small and there's not a lot of people my age per se. And so, being a new neighbor and, not having people around you your age and, you get down on yourself. And I kind of got into a place of isolation for at least 8 months.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, my motivation and inspiration to encourage others came from as well. So thank you for making me realize that.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. I think when we all look at different ways to try to figure out to get out of our anxiety or our depression or our loneliness or whatever that is, and you're doing it in such a way to help others, which in turn helps you. That's a win-win journey you're on, man.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I don't know if you ever heard the saying, like, you learn it better as you teach it or something along the lines of that.
Yeah.
Like you learn it twice better. So I definitely believe that's true because the more I go through an experience and then teach about it to other people, I learn even more about it because of other people's insights and what they go through.
You bet. And you're able to share your experiences with them, which gives them confidence and trust to share their experiences with you, and then you both help each other find some new air to breathe.
Exactly. That's exactly what I really just want. That's my main mission. I mean, I don't want to be like, one of those like leaders or like entrepreneurs, because I do aspire to be a business owner eventually.
Sure.
But I'm still young and I'm working towards that. So ultimately, I don't want to just be above someone because nobody's above anyone else or whatnot. My main mission is just to create a community of, my tagline or slogan, you could say, is creating a better me for a better we, innovate your world.
Oh, love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it came actually in my mind. It popped into my mind, that idea, when I was meditating one day.
You have such a creative mind, obviously, and you embrace it, which is very unique. I think sometimes I've been a creative guy most of my life too, and I've been around the people that are very creative. And my experience is that a lot of creative, if not most creative people, kind of let their egos get in the way sometime, and so they forget what started them out. They forget what the creative juice was that helped launch them, and they get wrapped up in their own stuff, and they end up not in a position like you where you can help other people.
Right. And, I think that also comes from, self-inventory and, assessing yourself from time to time to check in and take a step back to see where you're at and how your actions have been aligning with your values. And if they're not, you have to reposition yourself. So I think that's really important as well. And, it can be stressful to be a creative, like you said you are as well.
Yeah.
And because you have so many ideas, and it's like you want to do all of them at once. So it's like you're juggling a million things at once. And it's like sometimes I am like a jack of all trades, but I embrace it. I think we live in a society that tries to make you feel like you have to pick one thing or another. But, part of being human is using all of your gifts and talents to create what you want.
Absolutely. And I think the other part of being a creative is it lends itself to isolation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of
Absolutely.
the more creative you are, the bigger the tendency, I think, to be isolated, because you want those ideas to flourish. You want to spend some time to get the roots going, and you can't do that a lot of times, or we don't feel we can do that a lot of times without being isolated.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point you just made, because now that I think about it, I always thought, like, they say there's either like a person's an introvert or an extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you label yourself as either one, but I would say I fall more on the side of an introvert. And so I do a lot of research. I'm like a bookworm nerd.
Nice.
And I also like research a lot. Just out of whatever piques my curiosity, I usually research. So I'm fascinated by the human behavior and the brain and how it works and whatnot. And they say, like, introverts are connected more to their right side of their brain, which is the creativity, the intuitiveness, and, like, the more introspect.
Yep. You and I are on the same journey, my friend. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
right.
That's so funny.
I grew up as I can't even tell you how big of an introvert I was.
Really?
Oh,
So
my
have I.
gosh. Yeah, absolutely. And so I got into radio, which allowed me to be an extrovert by career, right?
Right.
So then you have the switch. Okay, I'm turning the switch on because I'm on the radio now, so I'm going to be the right? And then I go back to being an introvert and hanging out with my wife and my grandkids and my dog and all that kind of stuff. So I get where you're at.
Right, but I think it's actually a healthy boundary in a way.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Too much of anything is never good.
Absolutely right. We're about out of time. I'm stunned that the 20 minutes is almost over, because this has been really a great conversation. You've been talking about writing, or I was reading about you're writing a book, and you're also creating a podcast called Victorious Visionaries. How's the progress going on those two things?
Yeah, so the book, actually, I've been wanting to write. I always wanted to write since I was a child, but to make it short, I decided I was going to write a book when I moved to Florida, a nonfiction self-help book.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I learn, because I'm always learning, it's like the more I want to include in the book. So it's taking me longer than expected. But, so that's going to be, slowly but surely I'll be publishing that.
Good.
So I hope to reach that and get it published not too long from now. And also the podcast, I'm just recording a couple of more podcast interviews with guests, and then I'll be launching the full podcast on iTunes and whatnot. So that's very exciting.
That is exciting. And the thing about both of those pieces, I think, is while you're very inquisitive and you're very creative and you got 120 things going on in your brain, you're being patient enough to allow each project kind of organically come to life, and that's not always easy to do. So hats off to you for that. Right?
Thank you. Yeah, and that one hasn't always been easy. That came with, like, learning through trying to rush it originally and realizing you have to be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day, as my grandmother would say.
Either was to Barry, Florida. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, folks, to learn more about Victoria Grazi, she's on YouTube. You can just Google her name there, too. Victoria, Victoria, and then the last name is Graci. She's on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and you got a lot of things going on. I couldn't be more thrilled for you, and thanks for taking the time visiting me today. Really a great conversation.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast, David, and it was honestly a great conversation. I wasn't expecting to have such a good conversation. It was a pleasure.
Listen to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower on the go. Downloads are available on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any podcast app, and on our website at davidbrowervo.com/your20minute podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening.